In a business, we often talk about performance, KPIs, strategy, but rarely do we pause to ask why we do what we do. What drives us when no one is watching? What makes the hard work meaningful, purposeful? Listeners, today's conversation on the BizBlend podcast is about exactly that: purpose and passion, not just as the buzzwords or keywords or hashtag, but as the very exact core of how great leaders and teams thrive. My guest has spent years studying what truly motivates people, listeners, first as a research scientist and later as the head of global HR at Merck. Through personal loss and reinvention, she discovered that purpose isn't just about feeling good, it's about building resilience, leading from a point of authenticity, and showing up as your whole self. Listeners, her new book, Permission to Be You: Discover Your Purpose and Passion to Bring Your Best Self to Everything and Everyone, turns decades of her research and leadership wisdom into something which is deeply practical and also human for us. So, today we are going to peel back the layers of success to ask this question: what really fuels us? And how do we stay connected to it when life and work get messy? Listeners, meet my incredible guest, Alaina Love. Alaina, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Sana. It's a pleasure to be with you and a pleasure to discuss this topic.
Totally, totally. Okay, let's first begin with kind of getting an idea about the core of purpose. And you say, Elena, that purpose isn't just a luxury. It is like the oxygen, the necessity for sustainable success. But when we consider high pressure corporate settings, how can leaders practically keep that sense of purpose alive? When the numbers or the metrics they dominate everything.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question because my belief is that the results in a business begin with the leader knowing him or herself really, really well, being able to identify why they're doing what they're doing, what gives them joy, what fuels them, and what fuels
Mhm.
their teams. If you can do that, then the metrics follow much more easily than if you're not. So the leaders that I've met that I think have done a really excellent job have done a deep examination of who they are. They have worked really hard to understand what their major passions are, how those passions are causing them to show up or not in the environments that they're in. And they're also much more likely to look for building teams where there's a interesting constellation of passions and the people on the team so that people are bringing to the party not just their skill set, their subject area expertise, but they're also bringing their passions to the big thorny problems that organizations are up against.
Mm. No, I think that is really, really powerful. And I love that constellation here because it's easy to ignore or forget that culture can quietly drift when the why gets buried under the what. And the wake up calls, I mean, I imagine they aren't always gentle, but I think that through different personalities here, voices here, ideas here, not just the skill sets or the subject matter expertise, as you mentioned. I think it really helps the organization have its sense of purpose entirely, like in a holistic way.
Well, I think so. I think that the organization, most organizations I know will define their purpose in a certain way, or they'll say the mission of some sort that they're here to achieve. But if you cannot get the employees of that organization to feel bound to the mission, to feel that the mission or the purpose of the organization is somehow aligned with their own, then you don't get the results that you could if the situation was otherwise. So it's really important to look for the connection that can be built between who you are and what you do every day. And if the organization can help you find that connection, can be so explicit about its own purpose that you feel an affinity to it yourself, then there's all to play for. You come into work every day with a sense of excitement about what you're doing. You feel a sense of fulfillment from what you're doing. It's not just something that you do for as an economic means to an end, but it's something that you do because it's a deeper expression of who you are. And most people, if they were to do a back of the envelope calculation, would find that they're going to spend more than 85,000 hours of their life at work. Can you imagine spending 85,000 hours doing anything that you're not in love with? I mean, that would be crazy.
That would be crazy. I agree.
So the leaders that I have seen be the most successful have spent a lot of time working to understand themselves, as I told you earlier, but also they spend a lot of time working to understand the teams of people that they've gathered around them and what motivates each person, what lights each person up, so that they can align the roles that they assign those folks with the things that are going to give them a playground for their passions and allow them to enjoy not just what they're doing today, but what they could build and make possible tomorrow.
Makes sense, Elena. Makes sense. And let's also try to understand this, passion versus burnout. Now, passion is often celebrated as this, fuel for achievement. Like, passion is what exactly is keeping me driven. And as you mentioned, I mean, that is crazy, 85,000 hours of work. But then it can also burn people out. Now, personally, how do you distinguish between healthy passion and the kind that consumes you? Like, do you have any guardrails or um, like criteria?
I think that it's important to, first of all, understand what your passion archetypes are. I describe them in my book, and there are 10 passion archetypes that all of us have in us to greater or lesser degrees. The ones that are your top three kind of define who you are, and they also indicate the strengths you're likely to enjoy and the vulnerabilities you might be more subject to. And they also define the environments in which you're likely to thrive. So, very, very quickly, those 10 passion archetypes are creator, conceiver, discoverer, processor, connector, teacher, altruist, healer, transformer, and builder. And as I said, we all have all 10 of those in us, but the ones that really show up as our top three kind of define how we show up in the world. And there are certain passion archetypes where your tendency towards burnout might be greater than others.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you're someone who has an altruist or a healer archetype, your net export of energy is out to other people. You're worried a lot about, is the organization honoring the promise of its brand? Are we showing up in our community the way we say we are? And are we doing what we say we stand for or not? And when that's not happening, people who are altruists feel very disassociated from the organization, and they feel a sense of responsibility for trying to right what they think is a wrong. People who have a healer archetype worry a lot about the decisions an organization makes and how those decisions are going to impact others. Is it going to be a positive impact? Is it going to be a negative impact? Is it going to create a pain point for people or not? And if it creates pain, the healers are the ones who show up to help others navigate through that pain to get to a better place. They help to keep the team aligned. And you can do that with great capability when you have those passion archetypes. But even those passion archetypes have a limit. And in most cases, those limits aren't realized until you're about, I don't know, 100 feet from a brick wall and you're heading towards it at 90 miles an hour. You realize I'm not even able to put on the brakes. I won't even leave skid marks because you haven't taken the time to invest in self-care. So there's that kind of unhealthy passion. And then there's obsession, which is a little bit different, becoming so obsessed with a particular direction that you want to take that you cannot listen to reason. You ignore other data, don't conduct appropriate research to make the decisions that you're making because you become enamored with an idea, usually your own, that tells you should pursue a particular direction or not. But for the most part, when organizations have a collection of passions on a team, a constellation of passions on a team, and they have a group of people that are looking at things through a different lens. If your passions are different from mine, Sana, you look at things differently than I do.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make me right. It's just different. So the more we can get people gathered around a table to solve problems who have diverse perspectives, because they look at the problem not just through their skill set, but also through the lens of their passions, we get richer
Right.
results.
Exactly. Exactly. That is so well said. And when you were explaining about the obsession archetype, I could sense like picture so many founders
Mm.
in that kind of archetype, who become obsessed with what they're creating or what they have created. That kind of builds that kind of wall in terms of feedbacks or iterations or changes. Yeah, I think that
And
makes really, really sense. Hmm.
very often, those founders that you describe, in my nomenclature, would be considered people who have a builder archetype. Every archetype has a plus side and a shadow side. And the shadow side of the builder archetype, the vulnerabilities of the builder archetype, is that my way or the highway attitude.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who has the vision. If you don't get on the bus, we're going to leave you behind. And, no excuse is acceptable. No effort is too great. Keep moving towards the goal that I have set. And while that can be very exciting when it's a goal that everybody can see themselves being part of achieving, it can also be very detrimental when others in the organization are pointing out, here are the obstacles, here are the challenges. These are the things that might go wrong, and you can't get that builder archetype to listen. So they're headed for a landmine, and no one seems to be able to stop them.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And Alena, through your, deep research, and I mean, have you ever seen an organization lose its sense of purpose entirely? And if yes, what did it take to get it back?
A sense of purpose entirely. I think I've seen organizations move in and out of a sense of purpose. I think every time a new head of an organization comes in, it's a new opportunity to reconfirm the purpose for the organization or change it. And I think that organizations go through cycles of sometimes re-examining what they stand for and what they believe in, and struggle sometimes to come back to the core of who they are, which is why often employees are most disgruntled or feel most disenfranchised when there's been an acquisition, for example. I'm working with a couple of clients right now that are going through that exact experience, where the employees that are part of the organization really love their jobs. They really love what the organization they belong to and what it stands for. And it's now in a situation where they're going to be acquired by a larger entity. And they believe they won't have the same flexibility. They won't have the same sort of gritty, go after it um, philosophy that they've enjoyed in the organization that they're a part of. And they're worried, will this organization be the same for me? Will I feel the same sense of excitement and fun when I come into work every day? Or will I be under some constraints that are not what I thought I signed up for? So organizations move in and out of that. But the organizations that I think I've found to be most successful understand their core purpose, and it's unwavering. How they achieve it may change from one decade to another, from one CEO to another, but their core of who they are remains intact.
Mm. No, I can absolutely connect with that example because I have actually firsthand seen, kind of teams, kind of, the soul getting sucked out of, just because
Mm.
there has been an acquisition or there has been a merge with a different team that maybe in the same vertical or category or cohort. But their working style, their way of, that collaboration, the team dynamics are completely different. Though the metrics or the goals can be same, but the way, the kind of soul of that team was completely like sucked out.
Yeah.
And it actually resulted in quite of people actually leaving the team.
Yeah. And that's the unfortunate part about it. When that happens inside an organization, the people who are gonna leave first are the ones you really don't wanna lose because they have other options and other opportunities. What I always tell the leaders and teams that I work with, especially organizations that are undergoing some sort of merger or acquisition, is that you don't have the same company anymore. Even if you're the acquiring company, you're not the same anymore once you've acquired this other entity. And work needs to be done to establish who you are now that you've joined these two entities together. And that work needs to be done at the level of the leaders of that organization and at the level of the employees of that organization. Because if the employees ultimately don't buy in to this new design of what the organization is and what it stands for, you're in the same situation that you would have been in if you hadn't done the work at all. So it's really important to recognize that once you put two entities together, you have a completely different one. It's not as if the company A, which is the bigger company absorbing company B, now has another company A under its. It's not the case at all. I can tell you that people pay very close attention to what an organization says it is and does.
Exactly. Yep.
And when you are part of an organization that is behaving in a way that doesn't seem like the place you thought you signed up to be a part of, it's probably one of the fastest ways to lose your best people.
Yeah. Agreed. 100%.
And,
100%.
and that goes to values. You have folks that come into your organizations, the very best people that you hire have a sense of wanting to achieve a bigger purpose for why they're working every day. If they're lucky and you've invested in them, they have a sense of what their passions are. And from those passions, a set of values are birthed. And you want those folks because you want people that are principled with high values working for you. But there's a
Exactly.
responsibility for that. You as an organization have to show up in a way that honors those values and expresses your own in appropriate ways.
Exactly. Practice what you preach.
There's that very old adage, and it's still true.
Yeah. And also, your book, it also centers around authenticity. Now, when we consider workplace, it isn't always safe for vulnerability. So, how can leaders, balance, if possible, being authentic with being respected or, even taken seriously? Because there's this kind of notion that if you are vulnerable or, kind of this idea around emotional intelligence or EQ, if you're emotionally, let's say I'm empathetic, but then people would not take you seriously or, would not consider even you to be a strong or a good leader.
Huh. It's interesting. My experience is but the opposite is true.
Oh,
The
okay.
absolute opposite is true. Those leaders that I've worked with who have known themselves well, who have been willing to say, here's what I know and understand. These are the things I'm not sure about that I would hope my team can help me with and give me some insight on. Those leaders who have been willing to give themselves permission to be vulnerable have actually been quite respected by their teams because there's not this sense of, I know it all, I have all the answers, and nobody else is smarter than I am that comes across with their energy. What comes across with their energy is an ongoing level of intellectual curiosity, a belief that other people have experiences and opinions that are valuable to listen to and to consider, and a collaborative spirit that makes other people that work for them feel like they're part of something bigger and they're part of a team of folks who respect one another who are going to solve big problems and overcome big obstacles. So I think the leaders that I've seen that have been most respected have a vision for the organization for sure. And a strong belief in the organization and in the people that are part of it. But they're not unwilling to say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or let's study that further. That's authenticity. And people are, we're humans being, as the expression goes, and we're all we all come to the world with some very basic um, capabilities as human beings, as animals, in the sense that, like animals, we can perceive when we're in danger most of the time. We can perceive when someone's maybe saying something that they don't believe, or maybe not telling the truth. I bet you've seen it yourself. You'll
Hmm.
hear of a leader standing in front of a group of people, and that leader will be espousing something, which sounds a whole lot like the party line answer to a question
Yeah.
about the direction of the company. And there's this feeling inside of you that says, I don't know that they believe what they're saying. I mean, I hear the words sound right. I think I've heard this same message before, but there's something about the way they're delivering it that doesn't feel
Exactly.
authentic to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the fastest way to lose people, to stand up in front of them and be inauthentic about what you believe and about how that belief shapes how you're going to lead the organization. So I do believe that we are much more drawn as a species to people who are feeling as if they're showing up truthfully and authentically, because then that gives us permission to do the same thing. And who doesn't want to have that freedom? Everybody I know does.
Absolutely true. I totally, totally agree with you. I mean, it is so real. It is so real. I'm really happy that, you have seen leaders who are actually being vulnerable, who may not have answers to all the questions, but they are um, personifying that collaborative effort to solve, acknowledge that, okay, maybe we have done a mistake and let's sort it out together. Or maybe let's, figure out the problem together. I would love to have your ideas, your suggestions, your feedbacks. And again, that's what exactly, that, you are practicing once again. I would once again go back to that saying, practice what you preach.
Yeah. I mean, why hire all these smart people if you're not going to use their talents, right? Why invite them to the party if you're not going to
Exactly.
give them a say in the conversation, a voice in the discussion? Because they're sitting there thinking that themselves. What am I here for? If you're not going to listen to me, if you don't invite my opinions or my thoughts, if I have a set of experiences that you're not tapping into, why am I here? Because that's the fastest way for them to feel that they need to take their talents elsewhere. But when you can put someone in a role that they're skilled to do, or they want to learn the skills to do it, that has an outlet for their passions, and in an environment where their values are honored, you've got the magic formula for getting top performance out of folks, and they have the magic formula for getting incredible fulfillment out of the experience they have of working every day, and the fulfillment that extends beyond how much money they're being paid. And that's really what organizations and leaders need to look for.
Yep. Brilliant, brilliant. Alana, so I think our listeners will be so, so curious to get a hold of your books.
For folks wanting to extend this conversation further, because what I explore in this book is the years of experience that I've had with leaders and their teams, and how that experience has shaped what I've learned about what it takes to really, really be successful and to navigate some of the most important moments, some of the most pivotal moments of your life. And what I found is that in working with these leaders, the ones who really knew themselves well, who understood their purpose, who understood their passions, very often began to realize that their passions were having an impact on how they were managing through many different experiences in their personal lives as well, not just in their professional lives. So how they managed through a crisis, or how they parented, or how they navigated their career or a learning journey that they were on, even how they faced loss or death in their lives. Their passions had an impact on that. So the book is designed to help people understand not just how your passions impact your career and your success at work, but how your passions impact everything else in your life that's important. And I cover several of the most common situations that I faced with the leaders and teams that I worked with. And also, I examine one other factor, and that is that very often the leaders who had really figured out who they are, understood their purpose, understood their passions, sometimes still felt stuck. They still felt like, I understand all of this about myself, but I don't know how to move forward. And very often they would find it was because they were holding themselves back. There was some permission they needed to give themselves in order to take that first step forward. Things like permission to be vulnerable, or permission to fail, or permission to play, and permission to experiment. All of those kinds of things came up for folks. So the last chapter of the book posits 10 permissions that you might need to give yourself in order to really take your passions and use them to soar. So I hope that people will pick up a copy of the book, spend some time with it. It's one of those books you can read from cover to cover, or you can pick the chapter that most resonates with you at the moment. It is. It also includes a QR code for a discount to take 2 versions of the Passion Profiler that are available right now for book readers. One is a Passion Profiler for self-awareness. The other is a Passion Profiler for romantic relationships. And later this year, we will have a Passion Profiler for students. In addition, there's a host of materials and reflection questions at the end of every chapter for people who want to do a deeper dive into their own work and forming their own understanding of self and becoming more authentic. And on the book website, permissiontobeyoubook.com, there is a reader's companion toolkit that has a host of reflection materials, other assessments, and planning tools that are all free to the reader to access and download. So it's a little bit like having an executive coach in a box, and then some.
Super. Brilliant. And listeners, I'm going to go have all these details mentioned in the show notes for you. So go and check out Elena's book. And I think what I'm taking from this conversation is that purpose, it isn't a job title, and passion isn't a personality trait. And I think they're choices that we return to, especially when things around us get messy or they fall apart. So thank you so much, Elena, for your book, your wisdom, your observations. I'm really, really, I think listeners will be so much interested in to explore what there is in permission to be you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Superb. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of BizBlend. And I'll just close this with a quick question. Maybe you can ask yourself today or tonight, what's one thing you would do differently if you gave yourself permission to be you fully? Until next time, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.